And a source tells NBC News attorney Todd Blanche will represent Trump at today's hearings. It's not yet clear who else might represent the former president. Join the conversation. We have NBC News senior executive editor for national security, David Rode, and MSNBC justice and legal affairs analyst, Anthony Coley. He was most recently the top spokesman at the Department of Justice under Attorney General Merrick Garland. Also with us, NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss.
Michael, why don't you set it up for us? What are we looking at today?
Well, we're looking at something we should never have had to expect in history. You know, I loved what you and Mika were talking about a little bit earlier, the fact that, you know, look at the history of the Republican Party the last 70 years. Republican Party at least styled itself as the party of national security and law and order. And when Donald Trump became president, 2017, there were some people who were stupid, such as myself, who thought that one restraint on Donald Trump, since the Constitution does not put enough restraint on presidents who seek power, one restraint might be the fact that Republicans would say, we're the party of law and order, we're the party of national security, we will restrain our president from doing certain things. Not only did that not happen then, but look what's happened in recent months, just as you and the others in the group were saying. You know, 70 years ago, Dwight Eisenhower put Richard Nixon on his ticket for only one reason, and that was that Nixon, as a member of the House, had gone after Alger Hiss, who was accused of being one of the largest Soviet spies in American history, a great threat to our national security, leaking national, including nuclear secrets. That was the essence of what the Republican Party was. Look how far we've come, that so few, just as you were saying, are willing to oppose all that. Larger picture, and I'll say this very briefly, first president in history, federally indicted and charged today, never seen it before, and also to be accused of violating the Espionage Act. Can you imagine Dwight Eisenhower as an ex-president, you know, lying and taking documents back to Gettysburg, lying to the government about them, holding them back, and at least raising the question, did he show them to foreign governments or sell them? You couldn't have imagined most presidents even thinking of such a thing.
No, it is an extraordinary moment, a low moment for this country that Donald Trump
He doesn't deny he took them,
to.
by the way. He doesn't deny this, and yet Republicans still continued to back him.
Right, and none of his defenders denied either. They just point and engage in whataboutism. But you're so right. The Republicans are supposed to be the party of national security and law and order, and you had the Senate and the House doing absolutely nothing over the last 4 or 5 years to hold them in check, still not doing anything. And it's crazy. Our founders actually set up a system where they foresaw a would-be tyrant becoming president of the United States, but they never in a million years imagined that you'd have a Congress that would be so compliant to that tyranny. Now we have a Republican Congress compliant to an ex-president's stealing of documents. It's crazy. Anthony, let's talk about transparency. I was a bit surprised that the judge is not going to allow phones, not going to allow recordings, not going to allow audio even of what's going on inside there. Why?
So that's exactly right. My hope is that once this trial gets underway and Judge Cannon, a loose cannon, if you will, Judge Cannon actually takes a moment and recognizes this extraordinary moment that we are facing in American history. I think what is absolutely critical, and David and I were talking about this earlier, what is absolutely critical in this moment in time is that facts remain front and center. So my hope is that once we get to the trial actually happening, a live audio recording will be accessible to the press and to the public. That will go a long way of ensuring accountability, keeping the facts first, and I think pushing back on some of this mischaracterization that we've seen from Republicans that started even before the indictment was unsealed.
Right.
And so, David, let's talk about Judge Cannon, because you're writing your piece about her. Most experts over the last couple of days have come on. Yes, she was a Trump-appointed judge. Yes, she sort of ran a little interference for him previously, was shot down by an appeals court. But the same thing could happen here, could it not? Which is that if she makes rulings that are objectionable, that they will also be shot down by the circuit court. So are the concerns over her presiding over this case well-founded or not?
I think they are, given these past rulings. She seemed to go out of her way to back Trump's arguments. She actually inserted an argument he hadn't made, that it was, damaging to his personal reputation that the FBI searched his home. But the good thing is this appellate court, I keep trying to be the optimistic voice here, that there are 2 Trump appointees on the appellate court. You're going to hear these names. Viewers will hear these names a lot. Andrew Brasher and Britt Grant. They twice overruled Judge Cannon. And so, but she has tremendous power. She controls how quickly the trial proceeds. Will this happen before the 2024 election? She oversees the choosing of all the jurors, and she will decide which evidence the jury hears.
Wow.
And so it's sort of an extraordinary moment. One analyst told me this is the most important criminal trial in American history. And I want the American public to trust our court system. I gave Anthony a hard time when he was the spokesperson for Merrick Garland, but I agree. Transparency. An audio recording would be great. It would be great if prosecutors would request a live audio feed. The more information the American public gets, the better.
So David, just to underline how badly Judge Cannon mishandled her assignment before legally, I just want to read again just quick excerpts and conclusions from the 11th Circuit, which again, we've said it here before, but it's a really conservative circuit, one of the most conservative in America. And they wrote this, that her special exception, quote, would defy our nation's foundational principle. Would defy, Judge Cannon's view of the law would, quote, defy our nation's foundational principle that our laws apply to all without regard to numbers, wealth, or rank. They go on and say the law is clear. We cannot write a rule that allows any subject of a search warrant to block government investigations after the execution of the warrant. And then, again, speaking to her ruling, they go, nor can we write a rule that allows only former presidents to do so. Either approach, again, talking about what she suggests, would be a radical reordering of our case law, limiting the federal court's involvement in criminal investigation. Both would violate bedrock separation of powers limitations. We're not talking about here. I mean, 11th Circuit, I said, well, she may have misread this, and there was some, maybe she was looking at some administrative law, but really, no, they say her view undermines foundational principles in our Constitution and in our common law. I've never, in all of my years reading opinions, I've never seen any judge eviscerated to this extent.
Equal justice under law. It's that simple in terms of the American ideal. And then that opinion, again, was written by 2 Trump appointees.
Really conservative.
2 deeply
jurists.
conservative. So our system can handle this. There can be corrections made. And to be fair to her, she could be humbled by this. She could take a different approach. Like it or not, this trial will define her career, her legacy.
Well, she certainly understands. The 11th Circuit.
That's right.
The very conservative 11th Circuit. And I predicted this before because I know some judges on the 11th Circuit. Right. They're very conservative, but, man, you don't mess around with
That's
them.
right. What surprised me, not just about the strongly worded, the strong words of that opinion, but how quickly they decided this, right? So it did not take months, several months or years for them to dismiss Judge Cannon and take the ruling away from her.
Anthony, you talked about some of the misinformation that's been out there, even since before the indictment was unsealed. One of the themes we heard when the news came out that the former president had been indicted was that this is Joe Biden himself targeting his political opponent. The Trump campaign's calling it election interference. Sorry to take you back to the remedial class, but I think it's really important to establish how this works.
Right.
how the Justice Department is separate from the White House and how even the Attorney General himself separated himself from this by appointing a special counsel.
That's exactly right. I was at the Justice Department in November of last year when the Attorney General made this decision to, number one, appoint a special counsel, and number two, to choose Jack Smith to lead that effort. He did so, Willie, for two reasons: to ensure independence and accountability, and I think to also reassure the American people that whatever decision was reached in this case, that it was indisputably determined by the facts and the law. And fast forward now, 9 months later, we see in Bill Barr's words, overwhelming evidence, damning evidence. There is not a hint of political interference here. I will say one additional thing about Special Counsel Smith. He spent his almost his entire career as a part of DOJ's career workforce. He was not somebody like me who was a political appointee and comes and goes with a political administration. And so he doesn't have a political bone in his body. There are not political people investigating and prosecuting this case.